10, 9, 8, 7. MCC to control confirming given 5. Completed. 4. MCC to confirm given 2, 1, 0. Ignition confirm. Plus 5 seconds. Lift off confirm.
After achieving a series of firsts in its maiden launch, space tech startup AgniKul Cosmos is now gearing up to further test its potential. In May 2024, AgniKul Cosmos built and launched India's first privately built semi-cryogenic rocket that was powered by a single-piece 3D printed engine. And it is now gearing up for a far more ambitious test. In AgniKul's second mission, which is expected by late 2027, the company is going to demonstrate rocket recovery and reusability, a concept pioneered by Elon Musk's SpaceX. This will be a first of its kind for the Indian space sector and could fundamentally change the economics of private space launches. In Mission 2, AgniKul will not just put a commercial payload into orbit, but it will also prove that rockets can lift off, return, and fly again, making frequent, low-cost launches a commercial reality. Take a look at this BL interview with the AgniKul Cosmos founders.
So mission 2 for us is, a two objective mission, right? There's a primary objective to deliver customers in orbit. So that happens to be the primary objective. The second aspect of it is to also attempt recovery, right? And so here again, both the upper part of the rocket and the lower part of the rocket, we have designed it in such a way that they are not just one-time use systems, right? They will be multi-mission hardware. So the lower part is being reused in one way, and then the upper part is being reused in another way by keeping it in space itself and so on. So all of those things are going to be test objectives for this mission. So it's a crucial part of the mission, but that's a test part of it. The commercial part of it is actually directly riding on what we proved last time, right? So because in our previous mission, mission 1, the ascent, the going up part of the rocket was completely proven, right? Because that was a control launch. It had a vertical liftoff, a full countdown. It was done from our own launch pad that ISRO allowed us to set up. So there we have a full handle on the ascent. Couple of things like engine cluster testing and so on were pending, but those are ground tests, and we've also put out some media on cluster testing also happening and so on. So we're getting there on those things. That is a known part of the problem. The really interesting part of the problem is getting rockets back, and so that is a big focus area for the upcoming mission.
Liquids as a vehicle itself offer you that opportunity to test everything on the ground, unlike solids, because it's everything either in space or on ground once. But liquids, they allow you to have this multiple testings. So that's why if you see the other facility, that's where we focus our testing as well. We make sure every engine goes through a particular rigor of testing, which means you do not have any failures. So you're basically increasing the reliability of the launch vehicle. So that is something very unique for us. And that's what I think the customer definitely looks out for. Is it a reliable vehicle? You can't have every vehicle with a different reliability status. And that's why I think all the customers across the globe look for a vehicle that has reliability and flight heritage. And that are synonymous only with liquid vehicles. Right. I think in that way, that's how we are positioning to our customers as well. And that's how we are confident, because we do all the testing before we put anything on the space, right, to be tested down here. So that's giving us the confidence to do whatever we are attempting in the future. So I think a lot of India has a lot of space players coming up. I think in the last 5 years, we've seen at least 50 satellite companies coming up. So there are a lot of people in India. So before, it used to be a bigger story about coming from outside. But the best part is India is always positioned as a global supplier, right, for rockets itself. We've had 104 satellites launched from BSLV. So everybody in the community knows that if you want to get a launch done, you have to come to India. And if we are offering the advantage of liquids as well, I think The visibility is not, because we know there is a lot of demand. The visibility has already been down there. It will just be a good collaboration for all of us to work together in the market.
So with 3D printing, particularly as a single piece, approach, right? The entirety of the manufacturing is indirectly automated, right? We don't have people coming in the process of making a rocket engine. So that by definition increases even the first go itself to work. And anyway, like we were saying, because these are liquid propellant engines, reuse is a part of the nature of the hardware itself. Nothing is one-time use. So even on the ground, engines are tested multiple times, and we can point to the the regulator or the customer and say this hardware itself that was working on the ground is what is flying. So there is no process risk involved. You're not creating one more part. Okay. And the other aspect of 3D printing is it's easy. So when we are scaling to build out a facility with, say, that churns out 100, 200 engines a year or 300 engines a year, it's not going to be like a completely new game. Just have more 3D printers, a facility that will enable the working of the printer, and maintaining the printer means automatically the reliability of the engine is also assured. Other than that, there are other advantages, right? Because we are 3D printing the geometry that's needed for the fuel flow. We optimize that very well. Right. So that it is done in a way where you cannot achieve a certain level of flow geometry with conventional manufacturing. Right. So efficiencies are higher. Error rates are practically zero. Basically, the input is right and the machine is right, the output will be right. Sure. Because there's no other process in the middle. Right. So those advantages also reduce production time, reliability, and so on. So I think 3D printing is generally, we started off because it was the right approach for unit economics of a rocket engine. Yeah. But now, other than unit economics, efficiency, reliability, repeatability, automation, all of those things have also come.
I think there are two capacities that have to be spoken. One is the production capacity, one is the launching capacity. Right. Because we are doing recovery and reuse, so all we have to do is refurbish and do a launch. But production of the rockets is different, launching of the rocket, we are decoupling that actually. Right. So in case if you ask me, like for the next 1 year, if you had to print how many rockets would you actually make? I can have, for example, right, manufacture 5 rockets, but I can do 25 launches. Right. So it's a complete different equation for liquid vehicles, right? And I think that's what exactly where we want to focus on. Sure. So the scaling doesn't require to build for 25 vehicles. You can have it for 5 for production, and the remaining cost goes for refurbishment. And that's how we are actually looking for our business case itself.
So big policy victory, right? I think when InSpace was announced, people outside the country were still like, little bit skeptical about will it actually translate to action. So I think for us, we've seen it when translate to action when they allowed us to set up our own small place to launch from within Sriharikota. Now an orbital launch has also happened by a private player, right? So every single nuance of what it means to do an orbital launch has been proven now. So when we were seeing the launch, we were reminded of our own launch aborts and how the government was supportive to that and all that as well. So I think that part is very clear. Of course, now we are going back to the regulator asking what to do for descent, which has been covered. I think the good part is recovery is a part of the policy already. Sure. But from our experience of doing Mission 1, because Mission 1 that we did was the first controlled launch from India, right, for a private company. Right. So for a control launch to happen, the kind of rules and regulations that had to be followed, InSpace was working it out along with us. So now they have worked it out for orbital launch for a private company with Skyroot. Descent part is still open. So the last bit, the final 5% of everything closing, I think they'll be doing it with us. Sure. They have, as usual, been very supportive. So that's how we are seeing it, and generally a lot of buzz, right? So we've gotten so much inbound interest generally with that launch happening. Yeah. I think the credibility for private space sector in India has gone up after that launch.
I think the question is very simple, right? I think more than us, it would be the SSLV itself, which is another rocket from ISRO. And I think the capacity is exactly the same as that, which means a customer has to first decide between the government choice or a private choice. And then it comes to us. So for us, it is a global standard, right, which is liquids. That is what happens. So a customer has been used to fly with liquids. So I think people have been flying who know the reliability and the heritage that it comes along with it. I think there is no overlap for those type of customers. But if it's a one-time off, it's a university mission, or it's like a first-time testing or something, anything that gets to space is. So there's this good angle of reliability that plays in the space area, right? And that's why generally I think this was a good choice even for us back in 2018 to do solids versus liquids. And the choice was always towards reliability. And I think we are sticking to that path, and we've seen customers also sticking to that path. And in that way, there's no overlap. But yes, obviously, like there's a lot of demand. So a lot of people would want to go to space because there is a crunch right now. So I think it would be survival for anybody who will come into the space ecosystem and has a rocket today will actually survive because there's so much demand, and that's advantageous for everybody. That's a very big topic, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's easier. It's just that we have to calibrate ourselves to the current requirements, right? And I think at the same time, the level of innovation that we want, I think it could be coming only with boldness, and that's what I think the current generation has much more. I think comparatively to the other generations. Before it would be 1 in 100, now it is 10 in 100, right? It has changed, that ratio has changed. So nothing is smaller anymore, nothing is bigger anymore. So in that way, I think the talent is available. I think a lot of people want to do for space, already has that aura, and people want to contribute. In that way, I think, as I said, there are 50 space startups that have recently come up in 1 year, which means this industry is growing, and I think for the next 5 years there's not going to be any shortage to build anything in space. So talent, I think we are covered. It's just that the approach towards this is different. Space is unforgiving, so the character that you need to build for it, I think that shapes a lot of companies. I think that's how I would put it across as.
So I think in India, we'll see a few of these companies go from the tech proving stage to maturity. So we'll start seeing the business angle come out. Who's actually able to make more margins, who's profitable, all of those things will start to shape up. Generally think there'll be even more people coming in, right? Because with more rockets being available, more satellites available, this momentum also builds. So I think we're going towards that goal of hitting a certain percentage of business, global business, right? I think 8 to 10% was the government's goal. So I think we'll very much be going towards that goal. There's no question. ISRO itself also is taking on pretty ambitious missions, right? The space station mission is coming up, the Gaganyaan mission is coming up, and also I think all of these existing technologies are getting privatized. There is this technology transfer programs that have been announced already. So next 5 years, Indian space sector is going to look very different. I think unlike the last 70 years, this is going to be like a completely different sector. Good for private for sure. Good for government also for a different class of missions, right? Where you can't make money, I think only government has to do, because a private player will always finally in the end be expected to make money out of doing it. Research mission, I don't think will be possible by a private entity, at least in that kind of a 5-year time frame. And now coming to AgniKul itself, I think you'll start seeing us regularly fly the rockets that we've already flown. So that will be a big one for us. Also, we'll have that other unit also established properly well by that time in near Thoothukudi. Right? So that will also be there. Team will also be fairly larger and so on.